Yep.
And for the people who don't know, that's how we know each other. Is I used to work at Microsoft, and that's actually how we got to work with each other and actually
Yeah,
get to know each other.
absolutely.
And so a lot of my traveling, I would see you popping in and out, and we'd cross paths all the time.
Yep.
And so I'm now long gone, but you're still there. Fill
Yeah.
me in on what you're focusing on right now with the team and what's going on.
Well, it's great. Yeah. So obviously we work together. It wouldn't just be our great hairstylists that we share. No, I'm kidding.
You know what I'm saying?
The idea that like, you were on the Hollins team, I was on the Hollins team. And so, yeah, I've been on the Hollins team now going on like over 6 years, which is just kind of
Awesome.
bananas. I mean, and I know you were around back before it even, I think, launched. And so so was I. And it was just crazy to take this, holographic computer, create this market from scratch and be participative in this like roller coaster. And so, yeah, I mean, in that amount of time, I've had just blessing to be so involved in creating markets and working with partners, which is where I spend a bunch of my time, is on our partner community, right? Microsoft is successful not just because of our customers, but because of our partner community, and creating and fostering this relationship with partners that can help build solutions in mixed reality. So that's what I do day in and day out. But I mean, we've got our second generation product, HoloLens 2, came out about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now. I mean, we've got adoption stories that are bananas. I mean, back in the early days, I know you remember this, we were talking about Case Western and NASA and all these other fun things. I mean, and now you've got like lots of people replicating it. We've had people like Mercedes that are so focused on using it. Like if you in the United States, if you buy a Mercedes, odds are if it go get serviced, there'll be some guy with a HoloLens in the back service room using it right now to work on your car, which is cool. They did a big ad on TV with it. We did a whole bunch of things with Lockheed Martin, where they're now, working on the Orion spacecraft, which is supposed to help go to Mars, right? So we had this big story. We've got Case Western, who finally released it. So starting in the enrolling class of 2019, Case Western has a med school, for those people that don't know. And they had this vision going back like 6 years. They wanted to change the way they taught cadaver lab. And they figured, hey, we want to do it with holographic technology. Right. And cadavers are expensive and hard to come by, and there's a million other problems with cadavers. So they're like, hey, let's talk about making it a hologram, and that you can take apart and dissect and make bigger and make smaller and all these things. So in 2019, they actually had the first real class of doctors starting in med school that took holographic anatomy as an actual class. Damn. So like you're going to have doctors graduate that are like, hey man, I learned medicine on HoloLens, which is just no longer an idea. It's actually happening. And then, of course, with COVID and all these schools that were sending everybody home, they were one of the few places that were able to keep touch with their students. They were able to send them all a HoloLens, and they kept up like cadaver lab while they were at their house. So they didn't skip a beat with that anatomy class. And, again, if you're not at school and you don't have a cadaver in front of you, like, how are you going to do that? And they're like, oh, no problem. Here's a HoloLens, strap it to your face. And they didn't lose a beat being able to teach them and maintain like continuity on their med school program. So it's been awesome to be working on this. And, our team's gotten bigger. We've got people all over the world. And it's just the amount of stories that come in where people are going, this has changed the way we're working. This has changed the way we're rethinking our business. It's just bananas. It's just bananas.
Yeah. I mean, you're like, all the members are sort of rushed back here, all the different events. And at the end of the day, it's like, I think the obvious thing people think about when they think about virtual reality is gaming and entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's a great, and that's a big part of it. But one of the parts that surprised me the most when I joined the team and really saw the scope of it all was that the damage in a good way that this is doing is, well, like you said, with all these different partners and all these different industries, and the amount of efficiency being created by having some of these applications starting up with them is, I mean, not only are we allowing circumstances to be new circumstances of learning, like you just said, everybody's going home, but they still get the exact same experiences they would have been getting in the classroom.
Yep.
But now things are sort of taking it to a whole new level where you could even see additional things you couldn't even see before in the traditional way of learning.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in regards to that, like, has there been any specific, well, I mean, let me whittle it down. Where do you see this going in the next 2 to 5 years for the average company? Like, do you see some sort of a separation happening between companies who decide to take this on and in a certain percentage of them who are just sort of going to be slow to the game? How do you see things developing as this gets more popular?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I to go back to your original, so the first comment you made, and I'll come back to like, where I see
Yeah.
this going. You
Yeah.
talked about like entertainment. So I do think like, entertainment, video games, that consumer angle, I mean, is a super ripe space. We see it with, Pokemon Go and VR games, and Oculus Quest had this massive blowout over the holidays in terms of devices. But I feel like sometimes people think it's like an either or thing, right? Like either you're a gaming device or you're this tool that people use in the industrial setting, and you're allowed to be
Right.
both. I mean, a laptop or a phone or a tablet can do both. It just so happens that like, in some of the price points, they're not super inexpensive yet, right? I mean, that's how technology works. I mean, it gets,
Right.
people spend money and then it gets commoditized over time. So yeah, the industrial sector goes, yeah, the ROI is 10, 20, 100x of whatever we're spending. And so they're like, yeah, man, if this thing, I'm just making up numbers, but if it costs $1
Right.
million and I'm saving 10, it's like a no brainer. But you can't go to like, hey, do you want to make $1 million ROI at your house? Like it just doesn't
Right.
work,
Right.
in terms of those different scales. So, but consumer will have to happen. I mean, it will come down the road, but it doesn't have to happen absent of also solving these industrial challenges,
Sure.
and getting all the innovation out of that then lead back to what happens. I mean, it's like the equivalent of like, hey, the military does all this investment and then it shows up in the private sector kind of stuff. You saw it with Velcro in NASA. Now it's 37 cents to go get Velcro. Back in the day, it was like hundreds of dollars to be able to get that technology because of where it lived. So to that end, like I think in the future, the technology has nowhere to go but up. I mean, it's still early days. I mean, it's still a nascent business, meaning like it's not like while we've talked about mixed reality or augmented reality or virtual reality for decades, right? Seen movies, it's been in
Right.
pop culture, it's been in books. Like to create a business market out of that whole thing, that's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. That takes years to get to maturity. Yeah. And I always have this joke where mixed reality, like on this futurism meter, like where this is Windows XP and this is going to Mars, like this is like MR for a long time was here and now it's maybe here. So instead of being the bleeding and leading edge, maybe now it's the fast followers. And so there's lots of companies. In fact, when we did there was a research paper that came out maybe a year and a half ago, that said about 87% of companies are doing something with mixed reality, some version of evaluation, whether they're just getting started all the way through deployment. So you're talking like more than 8 out of 10 companies are going, hey, we're playing with this. So the question is, what are they doing? How well is it going? Are they finding value? At some point, it's going to be 10 out of 10.
Right.
And then that's when things really start happening. Instead of being in one department, it's now in an organizational division. Instead of a division, it's the whole company, right? Like it'll just get scale because the success is happening. And that'll be an evolution of not just Microsoft product, but anybody else out there in the marketplace. So
Right.
it's got a lot of places to go, for sure. We're not, the interest is very high. I mean, again, this is not just us, but you think about what people are trying to do with VR in healthcare, manufacturing, and in the defense sector, and retail. People want to shop differently. They want to build buildings differently. They want to teach medicine differently. I mean, it's all over the place.
All right, thanks for watching this clip from Appropriate Culture. If you want to watch the full episode, go ahead and check out us at appropriateculture.com. You can also check us out on social media platforms at Appropriate Culture. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.